The Battle of Castle Itter, May 5, 1945. World War II is nearly over. Inside an Austrian castle, American soldiers, German Wehrmacht troops, and French prisoners are about to fight side by side against the SS. Yes, you heard that right. Americans and Germans fighting together. And this actually happened. This is the Battle of Castle Itter. And it might be the most insane story from WW2 you've never heard. It's the final days of World War II in Europe. Hitler is dead. Germany is collapsing. The war is basically over. But in the Austrian Alps, inside a medieval castle called Itter, something impossible is about to happen. A battle that breaks every rule you know about WW2. Because on May 5, 1945, enemies became allies, and the most unlikely group of warriors ever assembled would have to survive the night against fanatical SS troops who refused to accept that the war was over. Stick around, because this story has more twists than a Hollywood movie. But first, let me tell you who was inside this castle. Because this wasn't just any prison. Castle Itter wasn't a concentration camp. It was a luxury prison for high-value French VIPs that the Nazis wanted to keep as bargaining chips. We're talking about Paul Reynaud, former Prime Minister of France, Édouard Daladier, another former Prime Minister, General Maurice Gamelin, Supreme Commander of French forces in 1940, General Maxime Weygand, legendary WW1 commander, Marie-Agnès Caillot, Charles de Gaulle's older sister, plus former ministers, a tennis star, and a trade union leader. Basically, this castle held some of the most important people in France. If the Nazis were going down, they wanted these prisoners to go down with them. By early May 1945, with Germany crumbling, the SS guards suddenly abandoned the castle. The prisoners were free. Sort of. But here's the problem. The area was crawling with die-hard SS units fanatics who didn't care that the war was over. These French VIPs were sitting ducks, and they knew it. They needed help, fast. So they sent out Zvonimir Chuchkovic, a Yugoslav handyman, to find American forces. When he didn't return, they sent Andreas Krobot, a Czech cook, the next day. But what happened next? No one could have predicted. Enter the most unlikely hero of this story. Meet Major Joseph Sepp Gangl, Wehrmacht officer, German soldier, and by May 1945, a man who'd had enough of the Nazi regime. Gangl wasn't some lifelong hero. He'd fought for Germany throughout the war, but as the Third Reich collapsed into madness, he joined the Austrian resistance. He wanted to save his country from total destruction. When he heard about the French prisoners trapped at Castle Itter, Gangl made a decision that could have gotten him executed. He would help them, but he couldn't do it alone. He needed the Americans. Meanwhile, Captain John C. Jack Lee Jr. of the U.S. Army's 23rd Tank Battalion was leading a small unit through Austria, accepting German surrenders left and right. Then Gangl shows up with the most bizarre request of the war. "I'm a German officer. There's a castle full of French VIPs about to be slaughtered by the SS. Will you help me save them?" Now, Lee could have shot him on the spot or laughed him out of the room. But instead, Lee looked at this German major, assessed the situation, and said essentially, "Let's do it." And with that, one of the strangest alliances in military history was born. Lee gathered his forces, one M4 Sherman tank nicknamed Besotten Jenny, 14 American soldiers, Major Gangl, and 10 Wehrmacht soldiers, plus an Austrian resistance fighter. They raced to Castle Itter, and they got there just in time, because the SS was already on the way. What happened next sounds like it came straight from a movie script. Lee's tiny force arrived at the castle on May 4th. The French prisoners couldn't believe their eyes. American soldiers and German soldiers coming to save them? Lee immediately assessed their defensive position, and it was not great. Castle Itter wasn't a military fortress. It was a medieval castle with thin walls, multiple entrances, and limited fields of fire. They had one Sherman tank, about 24 soldiers combined, some rifles and machine guns. And that's it. Against them, an estimated 150 Waffen SS troops with Panzerfaust's machine guns and nothing to lose. The SS attacked at dawn on May 5th. The firing started immediately. SS troops surrounded the castle, pouring machine gun fire through the windows. The Sherman tank fired back, but the castle's tight courtyard limited its movement. And here's where it gets wild. The French VIP prisoners, former prime ministers, generals, decorated heroes, grabbed rifles and started fighting alongside their rescuers. Former French Prime Minister Paul Reynaud loaded magazines. Tennis star Jean Barotra literally vaulted over the castle wall, ran through SS fire to reach a nearby town, and brought back reinforcements. These weren't soldiers anymore. They were grandfathers and politicians. But they fought like their lives depended on it. Because they did, the battle raged for hours. The SS kept pushing forward. Then disaster struck. A Panzerfaust round hit Besatten-Jenny. The Sherman was knocked out, their heaviest weapon gone. SS troops began breaching the castle walls. Just when all seemed lost, tragedy and heroism collided. Major Joseph Gangl, the German officer who'd risked everything to save the prisoners, was shot by an SS sniper while pulling former French Prime Minister Reynaud away from a window. He died instantly, a German soldier giving his life to save a French leader while fighting alongside Americans against other Germans. If that doesn't sum up the chaos and tragedy of war's final days, nothing does. The defenders were running out of ammunition. The SS was closing in. But then, the cavalry arrived. The reinforcements that Jean Barotra had brought, units from the 142nd Infantry Regiment, stormed in and drove off the SS. The Battle of Castle Itter was over. Every single French VIP survived. So what makes this battle so incredible? It was the only time in World War II that Americans and Germans fought side by side as allies. Not in some secret operation, but in open combat, defending French prisoners against Nazi fanatics. It happened in the final days of the war when everything was chaos. When some Germans were surrendering, others were fighting to the death, and old enemies had to make impossible choices. But here's what really gets me. After the battle, Captain Jack Lee recommended Major Joseph Gangl for recognition. Gangl became the only Wehrmacht officer honored with a street named after him in Austria. Not for fighting for Germany, but for fighting against the SS to save innocent lives. The French prisoners went home as heroes of the resistance. Several of them returned to politics and rebuilt France. And the American soldiers, most of them went home and barely talked about it. It was just too strange to believe. For decades, this battle was almost forgotten. It didn't fit the neat narrative of WW2, Americans versus Germans, good versus evil. But the truth is messier and more human. Because on May 5th, 1945, in a medieval castle in Austria, enemies became brothers. A German officer died saving a French leader. American soldiers trusted their former enemies. And for one brief, shining moment, humanity won. That's the Battle of Castle Itter, the strangest, most unlikely battle of World War II. If you found this story as incredible as I did, smash that like button and subscribe for more forgotten history. Drop a comment telling me what part of this story blew your mind the most.